Hello guys, and welcome back to another game. This is a special game because I just played this today. It was a 3 minute plus 2 second increment game. The reason I'm showing this game is not because I played super aggressively or anything impressive, but is because of a certain position, and I'll get to that position later. Alright, so let's start off. I'm playing white in this game, and I play knight f3. My opponent plays knight f6, and we kind of go for this symmetrical position, right? And I play c4. So I'll show you what kind of the mindset was going on. So for like the past couple of days, I've been playing pretty terrible chess. Like especially in 3 minute chess, I've been playing just horribly. So I decided, you know what, let's go for a position where it's symmetrical, where nothing bad can happen in the opening. Nothing like a Sicilian, nothing complicated, just some good old simple advantages, right? Just look at that. Got a nice c4 pawn covering d5. My opponent plays c6, kind of like a Slav system. Knight c3, d5. Takes, d4. Now we're going to stop here because I'm going to ask you what you would have done in this position. Give you a couple of seconds. Alright, so you may be asking, why am I treating this like a critical position? Well, because it's actually very important. There's a very deep thing going on here. With this last d4 move, white is going to play knight to e5. Now, the computer has plenty of good moves, right? You can just do any move you want. However, to me, there's only one move to do, and that is the move knight c6. You need to, and the reason is very simple. It's just much more comfortable to play knight c6, so that way you have this option to take away the knight. And when you exchange the knight off, you just have a lot less pressure in the position. It's just much easier to play. My opponent played e6, which is alright. You're blocking your bishop on c8, but I mean, hey, you're guarding your d5 pawn. I immediately play knight e5, knight bd7, and now f4. And now my opponent makes the first mistake. He takes the knight. This allows me a lot of things. One, we got this nice rook here. We got some coverage over the f6 square. And we gain a tempo on the knight, right? So everything's going in my favor. The computer says I'm at least up one pawn, but not to be outdone by my opponent, I played the move bishop e3, a mistake. The move I should have played was e4, and the idea is very simple. This d5 pawn is very weak, and we're going to start opening things up, because black has some developing issues, namely this bishop on c and this rook on a8. And actually we'll see this later in the game, where these two pieces have a really, really difficult time developing. So, okay, we got some taking, and yeah, this is one of the variations. So I just kind of want to speed to this position. Right, so look at that. Right, so yes, I'm down a pawn, but this pawn is weak. This pawn is weak. This pawn is tender. This pawn is under a lot of pressure. And after the tactical move a6, where it turns out you can't take this pawn at all, I'm going to get my pawn back. I'm going to have a passed pawn on b7. And it's just a very nice game for me. And as long as I don't make any mistakes, everything's good. Unfortunately, my opponent was jealous that I made a mistake, and so he himself made another mistake. And so he played a6, preventing knight b5. Knight b5 is not really the biggest threat in your position. This really is not a development move. Developing is actually a lot more important than the knight on d6 in this case. But okay, we play queen d2, and I would say for the next 3 moves, black just makes error after error after error. Okay, the first error is knight b6. Your knight should be here guarding f6, potentially going to f8 to guard h7, right? Also, this threat of knight c4 was easily stopped with the move b3, right? So no worries about that. His second error was playing rook to e8. And you'll see why this is going to be a problem. So, okay, your rook was useless on f8. But, okay, let's agree. The rook is useless on f8. Your rook is equally useless on e8. But here's the thing. They're both useless in either case, but at least your rook was guarding the f7 pawn, right? At least it was guarding a weakness. But by putting on e8, you do 2 things. You undefend the f7 pawn that's on an open file, but you also take away a square from your queen. So after attacking the queen, now you don't got many choices. Now, there's two moves that black can play. Queen c7 or queen d7. So we're going to pause here and just think about what move would you play as black. Give a couple of moments. All right. So black can either play rook e7, which is just horrible, queen c7, or queen d7. Personally, I would play queen c7. It's losing. In fact, the computer considers both of them losing. Like, you don't see a difference. But queen c7 just feels a lot better, right? And the reason why is because in the game, he plays queen d7. The problem with queen d7, right, and this is something I just noticed during the game. Like, I stopped in this position. I was like, wait a minute. Hold up. Hold the phone. Something ain't right here. So let's look at this. So let's start off with the obvious fact. I am winning, right? White is just super winning. Like, white, it's +3 in this position, so it's not even close. But the why is white winning. Now let's kind of take a little detour, right? So let's start off with this knight. This knight has no squares, right? Notice that it can't go to a4, it can't go to c4. d7 was just taken by the queen, and you can't go backwards. So this knight, for the moment, is useless. This bishop, also useless. It can't go to b7, it can't go to d7, because, again, the d7 square was taken by the queen. So we have this queen that's blocking the bishop, blocking the knight, and by consequence, blocking the rook's connection. Specifically, this rook's square c8, because, you can put some pressure on the c file. Unfortunately, by this one queen move, you're blocking every single possible move, and I knew that. And so what that means is that the only three pieces that can actually move in this game are this rook, this bishop, this queen. Whereas the other pieces, I can move my bishop potentially here, I can play e4 and then maybe get a knight in here. Maybe I can get this rook behind this rook, like something like this, right? And my queen can move, right? So I can move 5 of my pieces, but my opponent can only move 3 of them. So I take advantage of that. Rook f2, so we're going to put pressure on this f7 pawn, right? We got to put pressure on weaknesses. a5, he's trying to get some play, but I say nope. Rook to a6, and now knight b5. Threatening knight d6. Since d6 square was also loved by my opponent played bishop f8. I play rook on a to f1, and now f5. So my opponent, realizing how bad his position is, he's got to open some stuff up, right? So look, now his queen is guarding h7. There's a little bit more room. Unfortunately, this comes at the cost of a pawn. E takes f6. King f7, and I'm like, you know what? I love that dark square bishop. Unfortunately, my opponent loved his dark square bishop a little bit more, so he attacks my queen. I move my queen out of the way, and now he plays e5, right? So again, look, it's all about piece activity, right? So he's opening up things, maybe there's something down this file, right? And you got some diagonals. Unfortunately, this hangs another pawn, right? So the cost of black opening up his pieces and getting some activity is 2 pawns. And again, this knight still sucks. I mean, the knight's only square is a8. This knight shouldn't be on a8, but it's going to end up on a8 if black is not careful. Anyways, queen g4, so exchange queens, because my attacks are getting very powerful. Queen takes, bishop takes, and knight c7. So I'm attacking my opponent's pieces, and he just loses one of his pieces in the fork, right? So let's look at the piece activity count. These rooks, they're going to become very useful. This bishop, useful. This bishop, also very useful. This knight is stuck here, and this rook is stuck because of the knight. So for the moment, the only piece in play, or the pieces in play, are this bishop and this bishop. So 4 against 2, which is not a good number, by the way. I play h4, and my opponent plays knight bd7. Now, my opponent was losing in this game, so he decides to pull out the very final tactic, which is known as calling somebody during a blitz game. It's one of the most ruthless chess tactics that's been used by world champions worldwide. Of course, at this very moment, I get a phone call, so now I gotta do a phone call and play blitz so I don't blunder my advantage. So, of course, the next couple of moves are just kind of fodder moves, you know, just moving for the sake of not losing on time. And as my opponent was moving his pieces around and attacking my pawns, my phone call was getting even more intense as more important details were being spilled from those phone calls, and I had to focus on both the phone call and chess. As a result, my opponent gets back a rook. I mean, he's still down 2 pawns, but I mean, hey, he got rook back, so I mean, I can't blame him. Unfortunately, the phone call had to stop there, and my opponent makes one final blunder. I mean, the whole game's been pretty bad for him, but he makes one final blunder. He decides to do a pawn sacrifice. Unfortunately, just like the movie, it isn't that good, so I just take the d5 pawn. After the king moves, I take this pawn, and now I'm just up a lot of pawns. So my opponent agreed and decides to try to stop stuff. You know, pin the bishop. I guard my e2 pawn, bishop e6, and now rook e4. Now, I'm breathing a sigh of relief. The phone call just ended. Now I can focus all my energy on this game, and I have 8 seconds on the clock. So that's basically like 3 hours. I might as well have 3 hours, you know. 8 seconds is plenty of time. Bishop f5, rook d4, and, you know, just next couple of moves, converting stuff. We're going to get to this position. All right, my opponent just played bishop takes e6. And because of that, now he got checkmated. No, that's not what happened. What was the position? Gosh. Can't remember. So this? Alright, I find the position eventually. Alright. My opponent just played bishop takes e6. Ignore what just happened. Because I hung the pawn. See, though? Notice? I hung the pawn. Okay? So, in this position, there's a tactic. It's a really fun tactic. It's a very basic tactic. So, what would you do? What tactical sequence would you do in this position? Alright, for those of you who said rook a6, you are correctamundi. Rook a6, pinning the bishop, because I wasn't up enough material, and I'm greedy, so might as well take it. Now, in this position, I decide to make a mistake, and decide to play rook 6. I mean, I'm still winning, but not as winning anymore. I mean, I could have taken with the bishop and, like, had a rook and a bishop and 2 passed pawns. But, hey, I mean, 2 passed pawns are still winning, so, I mean, no complaints here. So, move the king in, and, you know how some endgame technique, right? So, okay, we'll go back a little bit. Just, if you don't know the endgame technique, you push this pawn, and you push the other pawn, because this king can't stop 2 pawns, right? It's going to become very clear. The king can't stop both pawns, right? So, if this king went here, then I push this pawn. If his king goes back, then I push this pawn, right? If your king goes here, I push this pawn, right? So you just kind of like your feet, you move right, then left, then right, then left, and move your king up on the board. King here, pawn here, and then queen. King a6. I don't know what black's doing, but black's trying. Check, queen b6, and now king c7. And it was in this position that black decides to play g5 because he thought he can get Zug's wing. Unfortunately, I mean, like, checkmate's like 1 square, so we just move 1 square, and now it's checkmate. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed this game. Hopefully you enjoyed this analysis. Hopefully you took something away from this. Hopefully you're not wasting your time on this video, because I really would hate it if you wasted your time, and I feel bad for that. So thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day. Hopefully, I see you again some other time. Thanks. Bye.